So yeah, today we're talking about transformation. It's called Transformation Today, Streamlining Property Management Practices for the Future. We just had a great breakfast where we were sort of chatting casually about this and prepping. And really what we thought we would talk about today is I think we've all been inundated with conversations about AI and the promises of AI and all this stuff. And look, I run an AI company. I love AI. But I think actually the interesting thing that we're really excited to talk about today is less like, imagining the future and the potential of AI and more about actually like deriving value from it today. And what does it take really to roll out AI successfully? What do the workflows look like? What does change management look like? And that sort of thing. So without further ado, I'd love for the panelists to introduce ourselves. Maybe we'll start here. And sure, I'm happy to introduce myself. So I'm Nick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Grotto AI. We build real-time AI coaching and guidance for leasing teams. As it relates to this panel, my experience, so I'm relatively new to real estate, but I've been building AI products my entire career, which is a decade now, building for healthcare, for insurance, for hiring. And really the thing that I've learned over that decade is that the product really only maybe at best gets you 50% of the way there. And anytime you're deploying AI into an enterprise or a large business, the change management is really what makes or breaks the success of that engagement. And so, very, very excited to speak about it today.
Hi, my name is Rachel Ibarra. I am the VP of Data and Innovation at Cardinal Group Companies. I actually have only been in the multifamily real estate space for coming up on 3 years in May. Most of my experience is in data and tech and AI in a whole variety of industries. So it's been really exciting to be able to bring my knowledge of just best practices to this space and then learn a ton from this space.
Arlene Mayfield. I'm the EVP of Sales and Marketing at Pet Screening. I've been in the industry for 30 plus years, probably like some of you. So have seen lots of changes. So really excited about this panel today. Pet Screening is a software company that screens pets. So as you're screening your residents and finding out their demographic, we help you find out what their pet's demographic is.
I'm Kelley Brine with Rose Valley Management. We are a vertically integrated management company that manages 10,000 units across the country. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about AI. And how much the industry has changed over the past couple of years. I know our industry in general is considered the dinosaur of technology, but we're looking to change that. I think each person on this panel.
Hi, everyone. Dana Caudell. I'm the Executive Vice President and Head of Multifamily Operations at Continental Realty Corporation based out of Baltimore, Maryland. We have 10 million square feet of retail commercial space across the country, as well as approaching 11,000 units of multifamily assets with a growth trajectory of reaching 20,000 to 30,000 units in the next 5 years. So super excited to be here and talk about transformation. As I have also been in the industry almost 30 years. I'm getting close, Arlene. And we talked earlier this morning about manual ledger cards and typewriters when I first started as a leasing associate. So excited to talk about the tech stack and how we're handling transformation and change management today.
Great. Just the total wealth of experience. I mean, we must have a cumulative 75 plus years of experience up here. So I'm really excited to dive in. Let's start with our first question. So with so many new tools entering multifamily operations and the expansion of existing solutions, how are you deciding which technologies truly enhance workflows and properties?
I could start with that one. So at Continental, I've been here about 6 months. And for the first 90 days, I went on a listening tour, right? So I'm just trying to figure out what are our pain points. I was talking to all of our onsite teams, our regional teams, supporting departments, and just seeing where were the gaps and where were the holes. And what I uncovered very quickly is we did not even have our property management system software set up appropriately for success. And what I mean by that is we didn't have the right levers pulled. We didn't have the settings correct. We didn't have leasing agents or community managers that could pull even a projected occupancy report, right? So just the basics of what we do was not in place. So looking to build upon that piece and figuring out, again, what are the holes and gaps and the pain points. And I think it's kind of unique situation that I'm currently in. Being an owner manager, we've been in the industry 65 plus years. We were doing everything manual. So I'm kind of starting at a cool baseline of there is no tech stack other than our PMS. And I'm able to be very thoughtful about who I'm partnering with, what I'm bringing on board. And I know we'll talk about that from a change management standpoint, what that looks like, but really figuring out what the need is first and solving for that instead of just going out and grabbing, some of the coolest new tech that's out there.
I think one of the things we talked about at breakfast was the fact that you were saying you had to just create the tech stack from nothing. And one of the things that I was doing when I got on board a year and a half ago was to reevaluate our entire tech stack and just try to figure out what it is that's working. When we also discussed if you have any software that they're not using correctly because the on-site staff is not understanding it. And I think that's one of the most important parts of the full implementation and transformation is the trench that happens between the corporate office and then the on-site teams. One of the most important things a vendor can do is to make sure that there's a constant follow-up, that the implementation is rolled out smoothly and there's a constant training going on, and then check-ins on all of your softwares. And depending on the software and how long it takes to implement, I know vendors in the audience won't like this, but I really don't like to sign more than a 1-year contract because the technology is changing so quickly. And if it's not adaptable and if it's not rolled out correctly and it's not useful, then we're not going to keep it. So it's not enough to just sell your software that first time. It's just like us with renewals. Like from day one, you have to work on the renewal. So do the vendors. They should, like from day one, be working on getting us to continue that contract and extend that contract.
So I think that one of the things that you really have to think about is at the end of the day, your teams can only absorb so much. And so when you think about the new systems, and the key there is new, because let's be honest, a lot of property management systems do some of the things that external vendors do. And your teams likely already know the property management system. And so really being intentional about what is worth that extra work to bring people onto a completely new system. At the end of the day, even if it is the coolest thing and it works so well, it's more for them to absorb. And honestly, if what the property management system has already built into their core modules is like 85% good enough, then you should probably just use that as opposed to trying to bring in something net new. Because if you try to get the shiniest thing for every single additional thing, they're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to have ROI issues and people won't be able to absorb it. It won't be used. So you have to be really strategic to say, where is this absolutely not okay? And where is this good enough? And it's just not worth it to have to do that extra legwork.
Yeah, so I'll kind of summarize and follow up and say that, what we see being most successful is solutions that are integrated within the PMS system. Because then it's easy for the on-site teams, it creates less friction, it's very easily for the resident. I know we're going to talk a little bit about the resident experience today and how critical that is these days. But I think that having that PMS integration or even secondary, we call them mid-market integrations with all of the other partners that can't be added on is critical to that tech stack, because oftentimes we see that they are logging into 9 different software systems on a daily basis, and making sure that you're seamless is critical.
Yeah, I think kind of to bounce off what Rachel said about there's so many vendors out there that maybe there's a PMS provided equivalent that's 50 to 70% is good. I spend a huge amount of time as a vendor thinking about how do I earn the right to be chosen, right? Against that, I just kind of assume if not today, in a year, a PMS will build whatever we're building. And in order to that's a bleak prognosis for me, right? And so I think a huge amount about to earn the right, we have to be helping anyone at our customer go to the COO or the CFO and actually make the case for this is why, in our case, Grotto is worth the money, right? When you spend $100 on Grotto, you should make $1,000, right? And I think in terms of choosing technology, there should be more of an emphasis on the supplier side of really earning the right to be there and helping your customer go to bat for you and actually demonstrate meaningful ROI. Great. So this morning when we were at breakfast, we spoke a lot about change management being a really critical barrier to deriving value from all this technology. And I'd like to understand from everyone here, like what approaches you've seen being most effective in actually driving adoption and confidence among on-site staff when the new solutions are introduced.
Yeah, I can take that because we're going through that. We're rolling out 3 major systems in the coming months, and the way we're doing it is really choosing the right property with the team that is extremely strong. I know a lot of times when people are looking at rollouts, they're looking at maybe some of the struggling assets, and I do advise against that. Because they're already struggling, right? And we are trying to solve for that struggle, but let's roll this out on a property that highly occupied, getting the rents that they need, performing well to budget. Let's utilize that team. They have maybe probably a little bit more bandwidth to really dig in. And so we're looking at those teams. We're choosing about 5 or 6 properties out of 40 properties right now. And we're doing a little bit of a geographical split because we do know that sometimes submarkets differ. What's it going to look like in one submarket versus another? And we're really wanting to get those ambassadors, right? So we want this to be a successful pilot process and not just 30 days. We're looking at 60, 90, even in some cases 120 days, just depending on what the product is. And as you alluded to earlier, Nick, is the ROI, and I know that's something that we've all talked about at breakfast this morning, is we want to gauge that ROI during the pilot process as well, not once it's rolled out across our entire portfolio. So that's something that we're thoughtful about, and then working hand in hand with our vendor partners. So I was telling you all this morning, I've sat through 50 demos over the past couple of months. I have been in demo heck. I don't think I can say the other word. But it's been great. And I'm choosing my partners very wisely on the vendor side. And I do have to give shout out to all the vendors in the multifamily space. The amount of work that all of you, if you're in this room, Nick and team, that you guys have been putting into this industry in this space, especially since we say the COVID years, kind of like the wonder years, right? It was the COVID years. The amount of technology that's come into play just the past couple of years because we had no choice. And so choosing that partner, making sure that they walk hand in hand with you, especially when it comes to the rollout. You're doing regular check-ins, you're being thoughtful, you have those ambassadors that are going to be advocates for you with your other team members, because you are going to have team members who do not want the change. They're going to fight the change. They're going to resist the change. And you're going to want to have a peer that can have the conversation onto the why and how it's impacting them positively. And then having the vendors assist with training. Training is so key. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit further, but training is so important. You cannot just roll something out, set it and forget it. As you're checking that ROI, you have to check in with your teams, ask for that feedback, positive or negative, and do something with it. Make sure you take action. If your teams are saying something's broken, it's not working, it's not making their life better, then pause, stop, ask the questions, circle up with the vendor, and have some transparent conversation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think some of it even starts before you even get to implementation, just when you're looking at the different softwares. So because I require all of our on-site teams to get at least 3 bids. I feel like I owe it to them to do the same thing when it comes to different software. So I try and compare 3 different companies that do the same thing at the same time. And then I bring in what I call, not to sound too much like Lord of the Rings, but what I call the High Council. And the High Council is just my top regionals, my top managers, and my top leasing agents, and my top maintenance supervisors to all view the software and to tell me like what they think of it from their perspective, because I might think it's great and they might think it doesn't work. It doesn't work for what they need. And if it doesn't work for what they need, it's not right for our company because it's not a corporate software. Like they're the base of our company, and without the buildings, without the on-site staff, we don't have a corporate office. So I remind everyone in our corporate office all the time, like you're support staff. Like you're the director of marketing, you're the director of accounting, your support staff for the buildings. And I want to make sure that that's really clear to them, especially when it comes to the rollouts, because if the on-site teams aren't using it and aren't using it well, then we're just throwing money out the window. So I think starting the implementation process before you even choose the right vendor is a really important part. And then you're right, following it completely through, all the way through 60, 90 days, but then even checking in after that, because you have new people coming on board all the time. And one of the things we talked about is the vendors that do say, hey, you know what? I'll train you constantly. Anytime you want training, anytime you hire new staff, which we're in a high turnover industry in property management. So if I have a vendor who's saying, anytime you have someone new, don't worry, I'll jump on a call and train them. That alleviates my staff from having to do it. That makes sure there's not a disconnect. It makes sure everyone's fresh. And then also when the vendors have any kind of new rollout, which hopefully is included in the price, the fact that they would then train our staff on those and show them how to do it and walk them through the demo. And also, sorry, not to put so much on the vendors, for the vendors in the audience, but if there's any kind of issues or if there's any technical problems, if it doesn't have to weigh on my tech staff, like that would be awesome. If we can, when they can call and get tech support from the actual supplier, just throwing it out there.
And I think to that point, just really quickly to add, when your PMS system says that they will allow your vendor to integrate seamlessly, let's double check that. Let's maybe get that vendor on with your PMS provider and have a real, honest, transparent conversation, because what they may seem as seamless could be very clunky and may and not so
usually
integrate.
I'll ask for a reference of somebody who uses both to and tell me how it integrates. That's and tell me how it works, because I have not found a great PMS that already integrates a great business intelligence, which we talked about absolutely needing. That's why you have the tech stack and then the tech substack and goes on and on.
Which is to Rachel's point of if the PMS has it and it works, 85%? Is good enough, give or take.
I think it depends on what it is. For something like, leasing, that's probably not great. But if it's, some back office functions,
lease trade out reports, okay.
I have two questions on it, or a point and a question. I think first, we mentioned pilots a little bit and really dialing in the operations and also figuring out what success looks like in the pilot. I'm curious if anyone up here has run pilots that, in the contract, they only convert if you hit certain KPIs or certain, is that something you guys have done?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that's a good structure?
It depends. I think it depends on the tool and the product. I can speak to a situation where I kind of came in late in the middle of a pilot. It had been rolled out and it was for applicant screening, which is a huge function, right? Super important to your leasing velocity. We were talking about operational ROI and operational headaches and cost. And we had rolled out the KPIs as part of that contract, thankfully, because I did have to put a pause on that actual pilot. And what we determined was the tool wasn't ready, right? We should have never been kind of that first guinea pig to take a look at it, because our teams were also not ready. So, but it was great because we had transparent feedback for the vendor. We had some good, honest conversation. We worked with them on how to better the product. And 6 months later, we tried it out again on a much smaller scale. Unfortunately, they had actually rolled it out on almost the entire portfolio before I got there. So we have utilized that. But again, it kind of depends on the product, Nick.
Yeah, great. And we also talked a little bit about support and training and continued support and training. And I think I think that is the ideal, right? Mm-hmm. As a vendor, we want to provide incredible customer relationships. And one way of doing that is extended and continued support. And I think one thing for anyone in here who is buying technology today to know is that the cost structure of running a tech company today has changed radically. It's way we have to spend way less money on engineering and development, a fraction of what we used to. And I think the smart thing, what you should be what you should be expecting of your vendors now is saying, okay, you guys are starting to save a lot of money on R&D. Are you reallocating that money towards folks focused on implementation, customer success, making sure the relationship stays extremely positive for the duration of the contract? And that's it's sort of just the reality that we live in today. That is where companies should be spending money.
Yeah, I think I would add on to that to say, oftentimes once you do implement, first of all, you're making a decision at a high level, and to your point, Kelley, the on-site teams may not have the buy-in because they just think it's one more thing that you're requesting of them, and they may not see what's in it for them. So making sure that they they know what that is and the time savings that they're going to have, or they're going to increase their net operating income, which they're going to get bonused on quarterly or at the end of the year, I think is critical. And for the training, oftentimes the existing platforms that people may be using for 3, 4, 5 years change. And I think oftentimes the existing on-site teams or even in leadership, you may not know the enhancements that have been made. Somebody told me a long time ago that sometimes your most tenured customers are the ones that know the least about your product or your solution. And I think making sure you have that training so you're always educating what's happening, especially, that coupled with we do have a lot of, obviously it's a business that people are moving in and out of, but we have so much turnover on site that making sure those on-site managers and those on-site teams are trained, because if they're not, then they don't have the buy-in and you're spending money, or the resident is spending money on something that they're not using.
Yeah, you go a year and you figure out that the tool that you've been paying for the year has never even been logged into. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right, moving on. So AI has made it easier than ever for vendors to customize their solutions specifically to our customers' workflows, right? And I'd like to hear from you guys. What bar are you holding your vendors to in terms of making sure that their solutions work for your organization?
So I'm going to have maybe a little bit of a contrarian opinion here. I advise against too much customization, like a lot, because it's going to feel really, really good when you do it. You're going to say, this works perfectly for our company. But here's the reality of it. Number one, that's going to take so much more overhead and maintenance on your side for your company to keep that up. Number one. Number two, if it's too customized, you may actually miss out on their ongoing releases because they can't release all the new cool stuff that they're doing. And so, and then last is that the support that you get from the vendors may not be as strong, not because they don't want to help, but because if you've done something that is so above and beyond or outside the norm, their support teams may not be able to help. And so this is one of those things where there's a difference between configuration and customization. And so many of these tools are highly configurable. And so use some of this as an opportunity to say, where is this process or this workflow like this because it's always been that way and because this is just what we know and we should just keep doing it, versus, okay, this is truly important for our teams. Challenge yourself with that, because in all honesty, what you get sold in a demo is the best of what's possible. And it's mostly their out-of-the-box solution or a little bit of configuration. And so you see that and you say, this is incredible, we have to have it. And then you go and customize a ton of it. And then you're mad because it's not what you saw in the demo. And it's like, well, yeah, because you turned this into something completely different. And so while it's important that it fits your workflow, use it as an opportunity to question your own workflow and say, is this because this is the same workflow that we had from paper leases and we've just sort of mangled it to make it work in the world of tech? And this is coming from someone who leads a tech team and loves doing a ton of our own customization because we build a lot. And it's just, it's the lesson learned the hard way, is that customization feels good for about 20 minutes and then you pay for it.
And keep it simple.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Like, I think really it's the more complicated it is, the harder it's going to be to learn, the more times the software doesn't work or you have glitches. Like usually the simple option, someone asked me recently, like, what was my favorite tech solution that I used at work. And I was like, actually, it's my notes. It's like my Firefly, you're not supposed to say a word, but the one that takes all the notes on my meetings. Like, I love that. Yeah, see buzzwords. Yes. Not supposed to say the name, but I love that because if I can't be on a meeting, it takes notes for me. It takes notes on the meetings we're in. I know we all had them on our call earlier. And it just helps me be more engaged and more present. So I think all the software that makes your life simpler is always going to win over something that's more complicated.
And to the question too, Nick, is make sure that the vendors that you're partnering with are nimble, they're flexible, because tech is moving so fast right now. And if they're not looking at their roadmap, they may not be able to tell you what that 12, 18, 24 months is going to look like, but at least have the knowledge that they're going to be willing to have a conversation and that they're going to have the ability to pivot if and when necessary. Because again, putting my baseline together now for 2026, rolling out 3 strong, tech tech and tools for the teams, I'm looking at 27, but I want to be mindful of who I'm partnering with in 2027, because I bet if we sat on this stage same time next year, right, there's going to be some pretty new shiny things out there, and some of it's probably going to be really cool, but maybe the vendor that I chose is not going to be able to step up and elevate to that plate. But do I really want to go through change again?
Yeah, the time that you lose when you go through a change, especially at PMS, it's painful. Like, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, do you like your software, or do you like what you use?" Like, no, but I'm just not going through that again. I'm just not changing. But as to your point, there are other things, like when you make a certain timeline and you say, okay, this is how much change the on-site staff can handle. Even if you really want this and would make my life better, I just can't put more on them right now, because it's going to bring down my leasing. It's going to bring down the other activities, because when they're training, they're not leasing. They're not like filling out reports. They're not, fixing all the maintenance issues or anything we have. They're not working on their CapEx projects. So there is some downtime, and you do lose something every time you gain a new software, and just kind of putting that into perspective and making sure your timelines match up and are well thought out, I think are really important. And it's a great thing to say to even vendors in the room, like, know that whoever you're working with, it might not be that they don't want your software. It's just that they can't handle your software right now because they have two others. So having a long game, I think, is essential and really important to be like, when do you think this would work best? And I tell people all the time, reach back out to me in 2 months, reach back out to me in 3 months, because I won't remember, but it's better. That's when I'll be able to handle this conversation better. And I want to be able to pay attention.
Yeah, out of my 50 demos, I think I've declined 90% of the tech, because you're right. Like, people can only absorb so much. Right now I have 300 people that I have to get on board with 3 new tools that we're rolling out. That's a lot of people to get on board, right? And I want to make sure that we're being thoughtful and mindful of the why behind it. To your point earlier, Arlene, they really need to understand the why of why we're making this decision, and how is it going to make their life easier and better along the way. And so, yeah, I think it's super critical to make sure that you have that timeline and that you're not creating more burnout, because burnout is real. We're all experiencing it because there's so much flying at us on a daily basis. I think we were talking about going back to typewriter days, right? When we were using typewriters for leases. Yes, I just aged myself really badly, but it's true. And all that tech has really hit us in the past 5 years, if we think about it.
Well, and I think when doing research and looking at new products, and you mentioned this a little while ago about the PMSs, if you're doing a demo and you're like, this is too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And when you go to do the implementation or the rollout, you're not going to, unfortunately, salespeople overpromise and underdeliver. And so doing your research and checking references to know exactly what you're getting into. And we talked about pilots, and making sure that you are taking your strongest people, because they are the ones that are going to push back, and having that understanding and that conversation with your new partner, because it is a partnership, to make sure you're working out those kinks before you actually do a mass rollout. Every company has different expectations. I mean, Danny, you talked about things were so manual when you started. Other companies are much more forward thinking. So understanding that and making sure there are clear expectations, which kind of goes into those KPIs, is critical during the process.
And I know I can't speak to a specific vendor here, but I will make a comment that I'm working with a current vendor, hopefully rolling out maybe in the next 5 to 6 months, depending on how my other rollouts go. But they're inviting me. I'm not a current client, but they're inviting me to their summit so I can meet with current clients and have a conversation with them about how things are working. That blew my mind. I haven't had that previously, and I have to give them kudos and props for that, because that tells me they're going to be a great partner for me.
Yeah, and I think one thing that happens a lot with new tech, I mean, just this year, I saw 1,000 different new prop tech companies, a list of 1,000 ones. It's so oversaturated, and there's so much out there. And a disconnect can be, especially if you're coming from the tech side and not the real estate side, is not realizing that property management, multifamily housing is a very high touch industry still. Even though there's so many things that have been automated, that on-site relationship that is still what's driving the industry, and it's still really important. Is regardless how much you put in, you can't automate a relationship.
Great. Yeah, I love the point that like excessive customization does, like, it's sort of this this mirage of something great, right? But it can actually turn into tech debt, which turns into operational debt. I think kind of to my point earlier about how our company, like tech companies changing and like what does it look like to build stuff in 2026? It's easier than ever for us to say, we'll build this custom. I can just press a button on, ChatGPT or Claude and have certainly a demo that looks great for you up and running in 5 minutes, right? And sell that to you. And I think to your point, like, that's where customer referenceability really comes in. Like it's easier than ever for us to make something that looks so good in a demo. And really the only way to validate us is not to just take us for our word, but talk to our customers as references. Okay. We hear a lot about dashboard fatigue. Too many logins, too many tools. I have like a theory which is a little controversial, but I'll say it anyways, which is I think that this is actually a symptom of just using tools that don't really move the needle on true KPIs, right? Like I think that if all of these dashboards actually were, entry points to tools that provided serious balance sheet impact, people wouldn't complain about it. Like I think about my life, I log into probably 10 or 15 different tools every day, and I don't have a single issue with that because they all make me money in one way or another, right? And I think, when we're investing in operational technology, like I want to talk about KPIs and drill into this. Like, which KPIs do you guys feel have demonstrated the most meaningful impact in your experience? What are some of the KPIs that you look out for? And how do you actually work with partners to like measure those outcomes?
Everybody's looking at me. Yeah, I mean, what's, again, a unique situation for me right now is we don't have any KPIs in place. So I'm actually going to work with each vendor when I'm rolling out the tech stack to figure out what are those KPIs, how are we going to measure those? But to your point earlier, I'm going to bring in some of our community managers, our leasing associates. I think too many times we're forgetting about our service managers. I'm bringing those guys in and we're going to talk through it. But I think at the end of the day, what we have to get back to is the basics of what we're here to do, which is manage real estate and have a healthy bottom line, right? Because that's all our investors are looking for is cash flow. So Nick, when we're rolling something out and we're putting those KPIs in place and we're monitoring that during a pilot, one, we want to make sure we're getting that return on investment. And that's going to be different for each product and tool that we're rolling out, which is why I will lean heavily in those conversations with the vendor upon, implementation and setup. That's why those client referrals are so important. How has it worked for you? What have you looked at? What's been successful from an ROI standpoint? So I think that's a very interesting and complicated question. And I think it's going to be ever like evolving as our needs are evolving. But at the end of the day, real estate is real estate, and we're here to manage it and be successful at it.
And I think it helps when you're viewing a couple at a time, right? So you can tell, like, this person said it was going to take a week to roll out. This person said it was going to take 2 weeks. One person, it actually took 3 weeks. And then the other person actually took a week and a half. So I was like, okay, that's great. And I would really compare them against each other. And how often did they check in with me, not having me check in with them? How many issues did we have? And, there was at one point we were looking at, 2 different softwares that scrape the internet to get pricing. I won't name them again. But one of them, like the on-site teams just loved it. And it's so funny because the corporate office definitely thought the other one was better, but it was like, it doesn't matter because they're going to be the ones using it. I don't need to use it every day. I need them to use it every day. So it's really like, what do they find more user-friendly? And that's something that's really important. Again, more simple. Like, does it look like, an Apple phone, like where they can just pick the widget out and they already know what it is before they even have to read what the word is? Like, is it simple enough to just be able to use and to be like user friendly and to know where to go, to be able to pull reports easily, to be able to back up the data if they're saying they want to reduce pricing, which we were talking about earlier at lunch. Everybody says like, it's the pricing, we want to reduce pricing. It's like the most famous thing for on-site teams to say. It's like, great, back it up. Like, tell me why. Give me the numbers to back it up. And if we don't give them the tools to do that, then it's just lip service.
When it comes to KPIs, so I'm not going to say these are the specific KPIs, but I think about KPIs in 3 categories. The first one is property performance, so occupancy, leasing, NOI, that sort of thing. The second is resident experience, and the third is team member experience. I think it's if the people that are working on site are not happy do not like what they're doing, do not feel fulfilled, do not feel connected, those other two things will suffer. So those are kind of, you should always be making sure that you've got KPIs in each of those categories. And the last thing is, this is going to sound so kind of dark, but when you look at your KPIs, figure out how they can be gamed, because people will game them. So and really ask yourself, okay, what is some way that somebody could make this KPI look a lot better inauthentically? Because when you start measuring things, most people will say, okay, how can I make that measurement look better? So we've done a lot to give our team members insights into their data, but we had to look very, very closely and say, if they do X, Y, and Z in the system, then this number will go up significantly, but it doesn't actually impact property performance, resident experience, or team member experience. And so, and the reality is revisit those KPIs every 18 months, because people may figure out, okay, you didn't think that this could be gamified, but it has. And so now you need to revisit this again. And so, I mean, data is really, really good, and it's really important, of course, that you want to measure it. But the reality is that when you measure things and people feel that pressure to perform against them, they may do things that are not in the best human nature, but it's just the reality of it. So examine that closely ahead of time, and then continue to challenge yourself and re-examine it, especially like if you start seeing consistent work order turnaround times that are a couple hours across properties, then something's happening. What's that? So I'll always be looking at that.
I think to your point, Rachel, where the opposite sometimes is true also, always question the data. If it looks incorrect, and I tell that to my on-site teams as well. So we found out that for their engagement scores and their response times, when we were looking at through our CRM, the on-site teams were like, no, this can't be right. This can't be right. And actually they were right. It was totally skewed because all of our properties that are above 90% don't have to be open on Sundays. And so because they weren't open on Sundays, it was skewing the response time. And in the back end, they forgot to change their hours. So it was saying that they were open, but they weren't. But those KPIs are really important, and they're based on their bonuses. So always have that kind of conversation with your on-site teams and everyone to say, in both directions, right? They could be gaming it. They weren't gaming it. It was actually working against them. But, challenge the data. If it seems wrong, it could be wrong.
Yeah, and I think an additional point, I was speaking to a peer the other day, and they said they were building agents to break the tool, right? So they're going to be rolling out a product, and so they're creating AI agents to see if it could break the tool. And so we typically will use, our pilots, right? And we'll have our on-site teams just take a look and tell us what's not working, but then they're actually creating agents behind the scenes to go in and see if the tool's breakable. So just adding that I thought it was an interesting one. You'd like it, Rachel. I was like,
Yeah, I mean, it's dark.
It's dark. I thought I'd add some dark for you.
Yeah, I know the question was like which KPIs. I was kind of asking for specific ones, but first of all, I love the point. Like we need KPIs first, right? And I actually think that in terms of change management, having really well-defined KPIs makes change management so much easier, because instead of a discussion being like, oh, I think you should use this tool because I like it, or because it's been good in the market, right? You can actually say we're using this tool because it is it affects this specific KPI that your team or you're measured on. I think a really concrete example is like we build tools that help leasing agents close more leases. They're measured on close rates, right? And so if you can just say to them, hey, this tool is something that like helps you move the needle on like the thing that you're deeply measured on, that's just like, that's almost like this way of like influencing the organization to try something new, to try new technology in a way that feels kind of like separated, right? And divorced from feelings and divorced from politics. Just like this is the thing that's measured and it's going to help you do that. All right, let's keep going. So what does a cohesive, well-integrated tech ecosystem look like to you? And how do you ensure it supports day-to-day property operations?
I mean, does one exist? Because that would be great. I would love for you to introduce me to that well-supported, totally integrated system. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems we have in the industry right now overall is just implementation fatigue, and it just doesn't all work. It doesn't all implement. And I'm curious to see if we'll ever get like the Microsoft where everyone uses it. Eventually, we'll all be on the same PMS and all be using the same industry standard that all works together. I mean, Word does work with Excel. Like, it's not a problem. But when it comes to real estate software, it doesn't all work. That's my thought.
I agree.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where, again, choosing your partners wisely and having those upfront conversations with your PMS provider about the integration is super important. And I just tell them, I'm not going to bring you on board if we're not going to play nice in the sandbox together, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm the client. I'm paying for the tool and the product and the system, and I expect it to work. Is it going to be perfect? No. We know there are going to be hiccups. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be roadblocks along the way, and that's okay. We'll work through it. But at the end of the day, you're correct. I don't think there's a perfect scenario today, and I don't know that we'll get there.
I think getting someone from your internal IT teams on with whatever software you're rolling out, and actually going through the software system, which I know some of the PMSs don't like you to do, but going through and seeing what that flow is sometimes answers so many questions. Because sometimes I hear from where I sit, oh my God, this is so seamless. But then other times, depending on the PMS and the customization that has been done, it is clunky. So making sure that the days of a decision being made and things being rolled out seamlessly, they're still there, but they take longer because of the number of people. I think with successful rollouts, there's so many people involved and touching every piece of the process. That's when things roll out good.
Yeah, my VP of systems is on every call and asking the questions that I cannot ask, right? I'm smart. I'm smart enough to ask some questions, but I don't know the tech side. I don't know the setup system side. And so I make sure they're on every call with the vendor or the tool or the tech that we're looking to roll out, as well as the PMS, to ask those very important questions and kind of see if they can break the system, right? Because they're going to be the ones to be able to do it.
Yeah, and to your point, like our tech person, he was able to fix things within the PMS quicker than they could. Yeah. So I was like, we're waiting for this report, and it was like 2 weeks. He's like, I've already built it on the back end. Don't worry. So luckily, thank God for tech support. But eventually, you don't have to do that. Yeah. You want it to just work. You want to be able to have the reports you need when you need them. That's where like you have to bring in the data warehouse and the BI. But eventually, you want it all to be in one place. I don't like to log in. I don't know. Nick doesn't mind logging into a million different things, but I really prefer just one.
I think so. A couple things that I always ask vendors, vendors when we get on calls. A couple things are, number one, what does maintenance look like? And 9 times out of 10, I go, no, we do all the maintenance. And I said, no, that's not the question. To say that this is turn it on and set it and forget it is not real. Who at other teams, who that you have at other companies maintains this? And so getting into that. And then when I start asking about integrations, I don't say, can you integrate? I say, what is your standard integration package? And if the answer is, we can do whatever you want, it's like, that's a red flag. Tell me what your standard integration package is. And so basically saying, tell me what off the shelf looks like, because then I can start to gauge from there. When there's this, yeah, we can do that. That's actually not what I want to hear. I want the documentation that says what you just do and offer off the shelf.
That's the transparency, right? Those are having the difficult conversations. And I respect the vendors that push back and go, that's not something we can do today, right? And maybe we can do that tomorrow, and that's great. But not today. And I've had some really great transparent conversations with vendors. And so maybe it doesn't work for you today, but it might work for you in 6 months or so.
How often will you decide not to work with a vendor when they say not today, but tomorrow?
Often.
I would say often.
Because if it's not solving the need of today, then I'm not gonna waste their time or ours in the rollout process.
But the fact that they're being honest that they don't work with them,
I will call them.
I would definitely go back to them. Yeah,
100%.
Great. This was awesome. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughts and your discussion and your dialogue. We've got like maybe a minute for a question if anyone has one, but otherwise, okay, we got them. Back there. Yeah. You. Great. So how do you troubleshoot, and how does it get escalated? Yeah. Anyone have a quick answer to that?
I mean, I think it's different for each one of those, but a lot of times it's through the ticketing system. That's where we start. So at least we have documentation of it and there's a written record of it. So if we have to escalate it to the vendor, we can have the origin of the problem.
Great. Thanks, everyone.